Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we are going to be talking about WordPress 5.5, the features, the updates, the upgrades, and basically just getting you a little bit more familiar with what's included in 5.5 and also inspiring you to update if you haven't already, and more importantly, to find how you can get involved with 5.6, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all focused on. This is a community project, and everything that has been achieved in 5.5 is because of each and every contributor who has done work to help that, who has answered a track ticket, who has raised a query saying, I want this to happen and I want to know how to do this, to people who've been working on how to make that happen, developers who've been looking at how it works with other systems, how it works with other effect on browsers, and also documentation team to say, explain all the long, complicated dev notes, but also the marketing team and the cross-working team, which has been looking at how we can make question and answers really simple and how we can help people access and understand what WordPress is all about and why they really need to use it, and of course how they want to contribute to it.
So to kick this off and to delve into the heart of this presentation, this initial piece will cover a huge part of the 5.5 release, which is auto updates. We would like to prefix this next section with a couple of caveats and to dispel some common misconceptions around 5.5. Auto updates are only for minor releases. That means WordPress should never auto update and break your site if you don't opt into 8 major auto release updates. This means that WordPress will update to 5.5.1 to 5.5.2 versions and not 5.5 to 5.6 or 5.5 to 6. Auto updates for minor releases have been in the WordPress core for quite a few versions now. And the main focus of 5.5 was to move that functionality over to plugins and themes. It does that by adding a new interface to the plugins page in admin. I think we'll show you in a minute how that looks. And the second caveat I'd like to add here is by keeping your plugins and themes up to date, you make your WordPress website more secure. WordPress is software, and as such, it's an ever-evolving organism. All software evolves as technology improves, and because of that, potential vulnerabilities, bugs, or holes potentially may appear. By keeping your site plugins and themes updated, you are making sure you patch any holes or enable any new functionality as it's released. So how do you go about doing updates the right way, I hear you ask? Well, one of the major points that we can't recommend enough is that even if you choose to enable auto updates or not, you should always have a robust backup solution in place. That could be either via third-party services, your host, or you could manually perform the backups yourself. Whatever path you choose to pursue, if you keep regular backups, then keeping your plugins and themes up to date poses no worries and little risks. If you run into compatibility issues, just simply roll the website back to a previous version or backup and perform the updates manually to diagnose the issue. This was the screenshot we promised earlier, basically. This indicates the new user interface design of the plugins page, particularly in WordPress admin. You'll notice there's a new column on the right-hand side of the screen that shows every plugin and its current auto update status, be it enabled or disabled. This interface should allow you to enable auto updates for particular plugins and allow you to turn it off for others. Say you had a mission critical plugin, you didn't want it auto updating, you can turn that off. Second item here is jQuery updates in 5.5. WordPress has been running on a very old version of jQuery for many years now, and it's lagging behind the rest of the internet, basically. Because of this, in 5.5, the WP core team have taken the brave step of pushing jQuery to the latest stable version. And they've chosen to do this in a stepped approach. So they'll be doing it, I think, in 2 steps. Step 1 was released in 5.5, which is removing an older jQuery dependency called jQuery Migrate. The WP org core team have put together a plugin to re-enable the first file that was removed in 5.5 to help potentially mitigate any issues. So they removed a file called jQuery migrate, and they've also released a plugin that allows you to turn that back on should you run into issues in 5.5. And that also gives plugin and theme authors the time they needed to perform the updates on their end as well. The plugin's called Enable jQuery Migrate Helper and can be found on the plugin repo. After installing this plugin, a lot of people that were having issues with the 5.5 update have found a lot of those errors disappear. Step 2, which is planned for WordPress 5.6, will be to fully remove the old version of jQuery. To test that, to help with that migration, they've also provided a great plugin called Test jQuery Updates. You should really enable this plugin on any sites you maintain and test the newest version of jQuery, ideally on a staging site, of course. If you enable this plugin, it should illustrate any errors that may occur and enable you to fix them before the 5.6 update comes out. This is the jQuery Migrate Helper. You can find it in the repo. The Test jQuery Updates plugin, which you can also find in the repo.
So first, let's start with something from sitemaps.org, which is that the web crawlers usually discover pages from links within the site and from the other sites. Sitemaps supplements this data to allow crawlers that support sitemaps to pick up all URLs in the sitemap and learn about those URLs using the associated metadata. Using the sitemap protocol does not guarantee that the web pages are included in search engines, but provides hints for web crawlers to do a better job of crawling your site. Yeah, too much words, and let's try to rephrase it a little bit. This was official explanation. A good XML sitemap will actually act as a roadmap for your website that will lead web crawlers to your content. XML sitemaps can be good for SEO as they allow web crawlers to quickly find your unique content, even if your internal linking isn't perfect. For a long time, WordPress community was looking for different ways to make this happen, adding plugins, adding third-party services, etc. As of WordPress 5.5, we don't have to do this anymore as we have extensible XML sitemap functionality that is now part of the WordPress core. While it does bring basic level of XML sitemap implementation, it is far more better than having nothing. A default path that will be to access your XML sitemaps is wp-sitemap.xml. As you can see on the screen, it will just take the basic links based on the post types and different taxonomies and tags. We might say that in most cases, custom post types would be visible too. By definition, post types have to be public in order to be listed in this screen. Attachments are disabled by default, so not your images or any data from your media libraries will be listed on the sitemap as a separate XML file. In reality, most of the plugins that would add custom post types will be listed. For example, if you install WooCommerce, by default, you will able to see post products.xml and taxonomies product cat.xml. I just have to go back to some comments that I've seen that the bunch of plugins offer these types of service and maybe they have better results. XML sitemaps in core, this is something that we really long waited for a while, and I strongly believe it is a great success and it's beginning of something really great. Without getting too technical, XML sitemap functionality brings great level of control for developers, and this for sure will be a great factor in the upcoming weeks and months where we might see influx of new plugins oriented to sitemap customizations. Being part of the core means better optimization for basic usage. As a developer, I like to keep things tidy and atomic. However, WordPress is really far from that. It is core of various platforms and what is most important, web platforms. Future will tell as plugins authors will get more familiar with hooks behind it, how far and how customizable it would get.
about lazy loading. In WordPress 5.5, lazy loading is enabled by default for all images, which includes content, widget, site logo, etc. So what is lazy loading? Traditionally, when the browser is loading page, it requests all images and additional files at once, loading the entire page for the visitors in one go, whatever or not the visitors have even got to scroll down the page yet. It does not allow any interaction, such as the use of buttons, until all these files have been loaded on a page. A native lazy loading implemented in WordPress 5.5 used the browser's ability to delay loading of images until they are needed. This technique became a web standard in February 2020, and since then has been getting more and more support from browsers. And now more than 70% of browsers currently users have it already implemented, and more than 10% are can be enabled by default. And now we don't need a separate plugin for lazy loading in WordPress anymore. A lazy loading attribute is added automatically to all images, like content, logo, etc. According to HTTP archive, images are the most requested asset type for most websites and usually take more bandwidth than any other resources. But sometimes people don't get to the website for images in the first place, and they are interested in data. And this delay in interaction in classical way of loading images can really annoy people. So with this native lazy loading implemented in WordPress 5.5, we can produce a better experience for people and get everyone happy.
And you can see that being involved in the release makes everybody happy. So
definitely.
Just to recap, that obviously lazy loading for the majority of users will make pages and posts quicker to load, as the images will only be seen as people scroll to that section of the page or the post. It will not affect hero images on home pages and certain other images that you would see there. So from that, we'll move neatly on to Gutenberg. And just to put the context for Gutenberg, is that people think that the releases of Gutenberg and WordPress are at the same level. That isn't the case. Gutenberg has its own release cycle, and many of the releases that are actually out there already about Gutenberg were implemented within 5.5, but not all of them yet. So if you are using Gutenberg as a plugin, you may have other features that are not standard for core. So we're going to basically unpack a little bit about the Gutenberg updates that come with 5.5 and look at the improvements and the new features that you will get and your clients and your customers will see to enhance their writing experience and to make it a little bit more creative.
We all know that the rapid improvement of the block editor continues in the WordPress 5.5. Numerous changes took the look and feel of the block editor. In the hope of simplifying everything like iconography, color palette, focus, and general interface. If you're actively using Gutenberg, you have already seen all these updates. If not, there is a quick sum up. Like really, it will be hard to put all the images there. Like there will be like 20 different slides, but we can group them as simpler block toolbar, as you can see, better UI, color contrast. Things are not popping everywhere around the screen anymore. Consistent focus and styles. This might be a little bit trickier for the plugin developers, as they can't put icons as they want. They have to keep certain patterns. Redesigned icons for the default blocks. Grid-based spacing and sizes. Previews, as you can see, for cover image, and many more.
One of the most exciting features of 5.5 is the introduction of block patterns. So if you have not seen these yet, you really want to make some time to have a look at them. and it's only the start. Block patterns will grow, and the opportunities for what we and our end users will be able to do will be amazing as this comes to more fruition. So what is a block pattern? So a block pattern is one or several blocks that are organized and stylized. So if a pattern contains several blocks, you can remove them or move them around separately. So styling abilities are determined by the functionality of the block editor and whatever current theme that you are using. So a lot of questions that have been around the community since this came out is, and tend to focus on the fundamental question of, well, what's a block pattern and what's a block? So it's a really good question, and we're hoping we're going to make it a little bit easier to understand today. So patterns are curated collections of blocks. They're often organized around a specific section or purpose. You don't have to add each block within a pattern individually, but you can use the patterns that are available in the block library already, so off the shelf almost. So to show an analogy that we're using is that getting blocks is like getting the wooden nails, whereas getting block patterns is like getting a house or a picnic table ready to go. So the difference between also is causing a bit of, people are not quite sure if they've not come across a pattern before elsewhere on the internet, is that there's block patterns, and then in WordPress we also have reusable blocks. So block patterns come pre-built. They're based on common use cases that you'll see on the web, and they are part of the WordPress 5.5 release. So if you're running 5.5, you can access and use them. But block patterns can't be created by, can't just be created by users and saved, but reusable blocks are generated by the end user or by the developer who's working on a site. And they're heavily customizable, and they're based on what a user might want to add. But basically, both features, the block pattern and the reusable block, they build on the idea as blocks as the smallest interaction unit that we have in WordPress in terms of editing, and it should make it easier for people to quickly customize their posts and pages. So where do you get your block patterns from, or more of them? So right now, only a selection of block patterns are being added to WordPress. This will continue to grow. If you'd like more, though, in the interim, you can find plugins that have their own block pattern within the block pattern library. So another question that we've had in preparation for this today is that how is a block plugin different from a regular plugin? So a block plugin is a specific type of WordPress plugin, and it only adds that single block to your site. In terms of a normal regular plugin, it offers much more robust functionality, and it has a bigger impact on your entire website, not just a particular block. So you can find the block plugins within the block directory, and you can find them by using the inserter to automatically search for available block plugins to install. So separately, you can also review the currently available block plugins on the plugins characterized as block patterns. Really a bit of a mouthful, but if you look on the page, it says plugins categorized as block patterns, and the address is wordpress.org, plugins browse /block. So what if a block pattern that you're using is changed or removed in the future? Well, the way it's been built is that it will not impact your site, because once you've added a block pattern to your site, it's not linked to the original pattern, and any changes will not affect your site's posts or pages. So you're quite safe to use it and to do whatever you need with it. A link to that people have asked is that if I use a block pattern on my site, but I change themes because I want to do something else with my site. And again, the way it's been built, that's fine. You can change themes. The block patterns that were inserted into your post will still remain intact, and they won't be lost. I'm now handing over to Chris, who's going to talk to you about inline image editing.
You now have inline image editing within Gutenberg itself. You can zoom images, you can rotate them, crop them, all of the things that you can actually upload external images directly without having to go to the media library themselves. This should enable seamless editing within Gutenberg itself without having to move out of the Gutenberg editor into your media library to then upload images, etc., etc. This is a general UI/UX improvement to Gutenberg. The main questions we've seen come up throughout the community of this is, can I upload external images to the image block here? Which, as I just said, of course you can. Basically, you add the image block, you click insert from the URL option, copy the link in, paste the image link in, click upload, and it will upload it straight to your media library. It also gives you the ability to crop and to rotate and zoom within this editor itself.
With 5.5, we got a new, really interesting feature, which is the block directory. Abba, I believe, already mentioned this a couple of times, talking about the patterns itself. Block plugins in general are small pieces of code, mostly JavaScript based, that output some HTML that's actually your block. But what's new, other than you can search the blocks that you already have installed, is now you can search also from the, let's say, repository that we will receive in this version. Regular plugins can add new features and significantly extend your website functionality, as we all know, and you search for them using the plugins menu. Block plugins impact the site at the page level, and they can be searched from the page itself. So a little animation with the new block directory. If you need to add a block to your page, you can find it on the list of your blocks. You can use the search feature to discover, install, and insert third-party blocks to your page. When editing a post or a page, on top of right corner, you will see a plus sign that says add block. You see that when you hover over it, click on it, and you will see a search bar that says search for a block. You can enter the name of the block you're looking for or simply a keyword. Just like you will do when you search for a regular plugins, basically. If you see the block you want, just click on the add block. If you get an error message, such as error registering block, try reloading the page, or anything like that, you can try to click reload, which will load the page again, and most likely you would be able to access your block plugin immediately. Few remarks on using a block plugin directory. If you don't have an administrator role in your WordPress site, or you do not have permission to add plugins, nor you can add new blocks directly from the block directory, you will need to ask your site administrator to install any new blocks. So privileges are also tied in this part. Block plugins will appear in the plugins list, so don't be afraid, it's a normal thing, along with your regular plugins, and you will be able to activate or delete them from that page. Blocks makes creating and editing posts and page definitely much easier for users. You can safely and seamlessly install block plugins without having to leave the editor, which is the great and really neat feature, instead of going through the process of saving what you're working on, then going over back to the plugins menu, search for a plugin you want. Like in this case, just search for the block, add it, and continue with your work.
Thank you, Nemanja. So we've actually got a lot of wonderful features in 5.5 and 5.5.1, and we will continue to have in further minor releases. And it's great that we really hope that these kind of presentations will help make it easier to use WordPress and to help others find WordPress and find how it can suit them. The latest figures for WordPress usage are 38% of the world CMSs are powered by WordPress, which is something that we need to celebrate, and that is down to each and every contributor of this wonderful project. And we hope that you will all consider being contributors to it. In the run-up to 5.5 final release, as a team in Portsmouth Meetup, we identified some issues, and we were involved with the testing, and we were able to actually raise some of the issues. We also discussed it on our Portsmouth Slack, because not everybody is familiar with how to raise a track ticket or know how to document what is needed for the release team to be able to work on it further and hopefully find a solution. WordPress's ethos is about democratizing publishing, and that includes giving everybody who contributes an opportunity to do just that, to be involved, to have a voice, to be creative, to have your idea and your moment to actually explore that and work with other people. And I would encourage everyone to do so. Have a look at Track, see if somebody else is already working on something that you would really like to see happen. Get involved. And the same for if you use a Gutenberg feature or an enhancement that you would like to see, get onto GitHub. It is open for everyone to contribute and add comments. There is no barrier to do that. And if you find that there is something that is stopping you do that, please let somebody know in a meetup. Come and talk to us in the Make Marketing Slack. Come to Dev Chat and say what you're finding difficult. Find a track ticket that is of interest to you. And Track is where all the projects in core are recorded. And if you've got a WordPress.org ID, then you have access to Track. That is all you need. Find something that interests you, follow it for a while, and then just get involved. Replicate it. Most people who will add things to Track add it in such a way that you can replicate it on your own systems, on your own staging sites. There's no better way of actually making sure that happens than coming and getting involved.